welcome to this live reading from Old and New, The Enchanted Wedding Dress, the MacLellan Sisters Trilogy, Book 1 by Lucinda, and this is presented by Itsy Bitsy Book Bits. Chapter 1. Thud. Jamie slammed the door behind her, shutting out the biting cold. The silence embraced her as she entered the quaint cottage. A familiar ache wrapped around her heart. This was home, but she was alone. Kicking off black, high-heeled boots, she walked in stocking feet to the mantel, flipping a switch. The gas fireplace whooshed to life. She held her hands out towards the fire and rubbed them together, absorbing the warmth. Welcome home, Jamie. She wandered into her bedroom and changed into yoga pants, a well-worn fisherman knit sweater, and plush, heavy socks, perfect for hanging out in the house. The back door chimed. Must be the girls. Come in, she called down the hallway. Jamie, where are you hiding? Kenzie shouted. In the bedroom, be right out. Is Grace with you? She's right behind me. Jamie walked into the hallway, her smile tugging at the corners of her mouth. What's going on? Grace came bopping through the door, clear blue eyes dancing. Jamie tugged at a curl that had escaped from Grace's bun. I'm happy to see my sisters. The sisters were exactly 11 months apart, Scottish triplets. Each sister was born on the 11th of the month, Jamie in May, Kenzie in April, and Grace in March. They had the same crystal blue eyes and chestnut hair, but that was where the similarity ended. Jamie was tall and willowy, and her long hair fell in thick waves around her shoulders. Kenzie was vertically challenged and athletic, her short, spiky hair suiting an active life. Grace, the baby, was average height, and her figure was curvy like her bouncy curls. It's about time you got here, Grace. I'm starving. Kenzie grabbed 2 paper bags out of Grace's arms and hurried into the kitchen. Over her shoulder, she said, Hey, I thought Jamie was buying tonight. Grace shrugged off her long-tailored black coat and tucked the butter-soft pink leather gloves and pink beret into a side pocket and hung it next to Kenzie's deep blue pea coat. She tugged on the bobby pins, holding her hair secured in a bun, letting her curls bounce free. Closing her eyes, she sighed. Oh, that feels so good. She tousled the curls into place. I volunteered to pick it up. Glancing at the counter and then at Jamie, she smirked. Is there wine? Jamie's eyebrow arched. She smiled in response. But of course, and pointed to the kitchen. Help yourself. There's white in the fridge. Kenzie rummaged through the wine rack. Victoriously, she thrust the bottle in the air. I'm opening the Merlot. Pour me a glass too? Jamie asked, and Grace echoed the request. Jamie sniffed appreciatively. My gosh, the lo mein's making my mouth water. She rummaged in the second bag. I hope you got extra dumplings. The sisters quickly filled their plates in the wine glasses. Setting into the deep cushions in front of the crackling fire, plates resting on the square wooden coffee table, the girls held up their glasses. Cheers. Kenzie twirled noodles around her fork and shifted her gaze to Jamie. Your text said a box from Scotland arrived? Jamie's shoulders slumped and she munched on a slice of bread. I got an email from Mom. She and Dad are cleaning out some of Gran's things and found it. I guess it was addressed to us. I thought it would be better to open it together. Kenzie looked between her sisters, her smile pained. It's hard to believe she's gone. Jamie wiped away a lone tear. I keep expecting the phone to ring and hear Gran asking when we're hopping on the next plane. Guys, fighting back tears, Grace's face sagged. Can we concentrate on what's on the box? It hurts too much to talk about Gran's death. Kenzie wiped away the tears that had slipped down her cheeks. Grace is right. Let's open the box and see what's inside after we finish this amazing lo mein. The girls bounced ideas around over what might be in the box until dinner was finished. Grace stood up and whisked away the empty plates. She called over her shoulder. I'll grab the wine if someone can get the box. You know how much I hate waiting to open any kind of box. Jamie went in search of scissors and pointed to the closet. Ken's, the box is in there. Kenzie opened the door and carefully carried the box to the coffee table as if it contained something irreplaceable. Jamie returned and said, her hand hovering over the tape, Here goes nothing. Grace came in holding a bottle of wine. Be careful, Sissy, she whispered reverently. It was Gran's, so it's really old. Jamie held her breath as she cautiously sliced through the layers of packing tape and eased back the cardboard flaps. Standing on tiptoes, Kenzie peered over her shoulder. "What is it?" Jamie withdrew a cream-colored envelope. "It's a letter." Grace reached out to pull back the bubble wrap when Jamie touched her hand. "Wait. We should read it first and then we'll see what's inside." Kenzie stretched out her hand. "I'll read it." She slid open the wax seal and pulled out several pieces of stationery. Glancing down, she said, "I don't remember Gran's handwriting so spiderweb-like, so it might take a while." Grace leaned in and studied the page. "I don't think it's Gran's. What if it's great-Gran's? You know Dad's grandmother?" Jamie admonished, "If we stop talking and let Ken's read, well, I'll bet we'll find out." She picked up her wine glass and settled back on the sofa cushions. "My dearest granddaughters, this is your father's grandmother writing to you long before you were even a gleam in his eye or even before he had any interest in lassies. If you have received this box, it means that I've had the joy of seeing my beloved daughter, your grandmother, again. I'm sorry for your loss and hope your memories of her will sustain you through the years to come and her wisdom will guide you. I will assume you have a box from your gran. Have you looked inside? If not, carefully unwrap the contents and lay the 3 items I chose for you on a table." Jamie's eyes grew wide as she looked at her sisters. "What the hell? Is she psychic or something?" Grace clapped a hand over her mouth. "Remember, Gran said the women in our family were special. Maybe that's what she was talking about?" Kenzie's eyebrow shot up. "That would explain a few things about Gran. She always seemed to have eyes on us all the time." Absent-mindedly, Jamie tapped her glass with her finger. "Do you remember the time? I must have been around 10. We decided to get up early and go fishing, and when we got to the bottom of the stairs, Gran was dressed and waiting for us. I know we never talked about sneaking off while we were in the house where she could hear us." "You're right." Grace let out a rush of breath. "Our sneaky plans were always hatched underneath that old willow tree near the creek." Kenzie gasped. "Oh, wow, that does make me wonder about all kinds of things." Jamie waved her hands toward the box. "Enough speculating about Gran being able to read our minds. Let's see what's inside." Taking care not to rush, Grace took a small package wrapped in plain brown paper. She pulled back the paper and cut the bubble wrap inside to discover a carved wooden box. Her voice was barely above a whisper. "Should I open it?" "Hold on, let's see what Kenzie has." Kenzie withdrew a large floppy package wrapped in white tissue paper tied with the deep green satin ribbon. She pulled back the paper, revealing a large piece of wool, a Scottish tartan. "Isn't this the MacLellan plaid?" She carefully placed it on the back of the sofa. Jamie and Grace nodded, eager to see the 3rd item. "One item left, Jamie. Your turn." Kenzie slid the box in front of her older sister. Jamie pulled out an identical-looking package tied with the same ribbon. "Do you think it's another plaid? Maybe a cape?" She tugged the bow and eased back the tissue paper. "Oh my gosh, it's a wedding dress!" Awestruck, Grace reached out and fingered the silky fabric. "Do you think it was great-Gran's?" Jamie's voice softened. "It must have been. Look at the style. The simplicity of the cut is definitely vintage. The fabric feels like silk." She turned the dress over. "And look at the laces on the back. That must have been how it was secured." Jamie held it up to look closer. "This eyelet looks to be hand-sewn. It must have taken hours, and the needlework is exquisite." Kenzie picked up the letter. "Let's see what Great-Gran has to say about it." "Wait, what's in the little box?" Grace pried off the top and unfolded a square of the same silky fabric as the dress. Nestled inside was a large brooch. She held it up in the firelight. "Look, it's a thistle, and I wonder if the stone is an amethyst." Grace turned it over in her hand. "Oh, it's stunning," she said breathlessly. Kenzie's eyes were drawn back to the letter. She began to read. "Now that you have the plaid, the dress, and the brooch unpacked, it's time for you to know what this means. When I was a young woman, I was convinced I would never marry. I was rapidly approaching spinsterhood. I was fine with not having a husband or a family for a while. But there did come a day when I longed to have a man to share my life with and raise a family. One day while I was preparing a meal for my parents, I had a vision of 3 lovely young women. Jamie, Kenzie, and Grace. I didn't tell anyone, but I knew deep in my heart that you were my legacy. Grace hit her hand on the table with a thud. I knew it! Gran was a psychic! Jamie felt goosebumps crawl over her arms. Annoyed, Kenzie looked over the top of the page. Can I continue? Grace sank back into the pillows and sulked. Sure, don't let me stop you. After my vision, I wondered, would I marry and have a family? The next day, I went to an old wise woman who lived in our village. I told her what I had seen and asked, how can my blood flow in the veins of these young women I saw when I'm not betrothed? The old woman asked me to fetch her sewing basket. Of course I did. When I handed it to her, she dug to the very bottom and pulled out a large spool of ivory silk thread. She handed it to me and told me to purchase the finest fabric I could find and make a wedding dress, but only use this thread. Once it was complete, put the dress on and look into a mirror. If I did as she instructed, the man meant to be my husband would find me. I was skeptical. However, the image of 3 lovely young women began to appear in my dreams. I made the dress you have in your possession. I followed the instructions exactly. I wore the dress one time after it was complete as a woman without a man to marry. My parents thought I was touched with fever, but I was compelled to do this. Our family legacy depended on it. I guess by now you've figured out I did marry. His name was James Mackenzie. He was a good man and a good father, and we were blessed with 1 daughter. Your gran, Arabelle, was hesitant to marry. She felt there wasn't a man to live up to her standards. On her 18th birthday, I implored her to don my wedding dress. She did, and later that year she fell in love with and married Rory MacLellan. As you know, he was your grandfather MacLellan. Kenzie looked over the top of the page. Did you know any of this, Jamie? Shaking her head, Jamie fought to keep her voice steady. I know some of the names, but nothing about the dress. Keep reading. That leads me to you, my beautiful great-granddaughters, in your current situation. Each of you is unmarried. Grace sucked in a breath. What is she, a witch? Jamie laughed, breaking the tension. Remember, she said she could see the future, but I don't think she was a witch. Kenzie's voice cut through the giggles. Hey, you two, let me finish. As my last request to my daughter Arabelle, I had her take the brooch my dear husband gave me on our wedding day, the MacLellan family plaid from Rory MacLellan, and the wedding dress that had been worn by 2 of your ancestors, and stored in a chest with instructions the items be sent to you upon Arabelle's death. It is time for each of you to try on this dress. As long as the original seams are untouched, this dress will continue to hold the magic of love and hope for the future in each stitch. Although we have never met, I have great love for you, daughters of my beloved grandson James. Be brave, my lovelies. I am with you always. Your great-grandmother, Anne. Kenzie leaned back in the chair, clutching the sheaf of papers to her chest. I never gave it much thought, but I was named after our great-grandfather's surname. Jamie shook her head in disbelief. I always thought I was named for Dad, but it seems like he was named after great-grandfather. I never knew. Sadness filled Grace's eyes as she looked at her sisters. So, where did they come up with the name Grace? I'm not named after anyone. Jamie hopped up and grinned. Hold on, I have an idea. Give me a second. She returned with her laptop. After flipping it open, she struck a few keys. Just as I suspected. Anne means graceful one. Grace beamed. So in some small way, each of us is connected to our great-grandmother Anne. It would seem so, but why do we need to get married? Kenzie gingerly touched the dress. Aren't we all fine just as we are? We're successful in our careers, financially stable, and what do we need men for? We've made a choice to be single 30-somethings, so there's no need to try the dress on, right? Jamie closed her laptop. Of course we're happily single. Her eyes grew misty. You do have to admit it is kind of cool to get a letter from great-grandmother Anne and have the brooch great-granddad gave her, a dress she made along with the plaid. It is, but weird at the same time. But don't you think it's a little creepy that great-grandmother Anne seems to know so much about us? Grace stood up and stretched. Kenzie mused, tapping her chin. You know, I never really thought about psychic ability, but it would explain why we seem to know what each other is thinking. Jamie rubbed her eyes and shook her head in disbelief. I really don't think we're psychic, but, well, it does leave a lot of unanswered questions. Kenzie yawned. I'm beat. It's time for me to head home. She pulled herself up from the couch and handed the letter to Jamie. Before we head out, we should toast to our family. It's a Jameson kind of night. The girls walked over to the granite-topped island. Jamie lined up 3 shot glasses and poured in splashes of whiskey. Holding her glass aloft, she waited until Grace and Kenzie joined her. Jamie said, to all the women who came before us. The girls downed the smooth liquid and set their glasses down. Kenzie broke the silence. I guess since you're the oldest, it's your responsibility to store everything. Jamie trailed her sisters to the back door. Hugging them tight, she said, I'll put everything away for safekeeping, and if you get the urge to try the dress on, let me know. Kenzie smirked. Yeah, right, like any of us wants to try on a wedding dress. Grace stifled a yawn and patted Jamie on the arm. Talk to you tomorrow, sis. Jamie watched her sister's cars drive down the deserted, snow-covered street. Shivering, she closed the door and flipped the lock. She wandered into the empty living room and tenderly folded the soft wool fabric and laid it in the box, adding the wedding dress on top. She ran her hand over the lace and wondering how long it took her great-grandmother to make it. She touched the brooch. I need to get this appraised and then insured. I would hate for something to happen to this antique pin. She replaced the top of the wooden box and carried them into her bedroom. She laid the small one on the cedar chest and the large one on the cedar chest and the small box which held the brooch on her dresser, and she started to leave the room. Hesitating, she turned on her heel. It was as if the dress was calling to her. With a shake of her head, she pulled the dress and plaid out. These are far too beautiful to be hidden away. Jamie draped the plaid over her reading chair and dug around in her closet for a padded hanger. She slipped the hanger from the bottom of the dress and hung it on her closet door. After propping the bedroom door open, she went back to the kitchen to clean up before calling it a night. When she was done, Jamie returned to her bedroom feeling wide awake. She curled up in her reading chair and picked up the novel she was reading when a chill came over her. She grabbed the blanket behind her and tucked an afghan around her feet, and she got lost in her book.